Hey, my name is Daniel Franco, and this is the Creating Synergy podcast, your business and leadership podcast where we speak to high-profile leaders and thinkers about their careers and dig deep by asking the questions we all want the answers to, uncovering their stories, strategies, leadership lessons, and their secrets to success. So welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. My name is Daniel Franco. Today we've got the great man Paul Edginton on the show, CEO of Vinomofo, previously CEO of SYC for 18 plus years and a former Entrepreneur of the Year as well.
Yep.
Excellent. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Pretty. There's a lot of experience in your career. And everything that I know about you, and every conversation we've had to date, I've almost written every word that's come out of your mouth down.
That's very
So
nice.
I'd love to just hear, and the listeners might want to learn a little bit more about your growth to where you were and how you started. I know you started off with a few little startups early in your career, and then you found your way into being a CEO.
Yep.
It'd be interesting to learn a little bit more about your growth and your journey through your career.
Sure. I started off when I left school wanting to be a journalist. So I
Very good.
studied really hard to get into journalism school at McGill, which back in those days was the only Bachelor of Journalism you could get into. So it was people from around the country fought to get in there. So I worked really hard to get in there. And and it's because I like writing and I like listening to people and I like people's stories. But I didn't like journalism when I got in it, which is, be careful.
Yeah. No.
Say that, but
I'm
I transferred to communications
Yeah.
at McGill, which again back then, this is a long time ago, but back then, communications is what the people who didn't get into journalism did. So it was kind of like this. What are you doing going backwards?
Yeah.
But it wasn't backwards at all. My dad had said to me, in the future, communications and having good communication skills will be more important than it's ever been before. And he was saying this in the 80s, before the internet, before podcasts and all those sort of things. But he thought it was really important. So I did communications. And then while I was studying, of course, I worked like lots of students do.
Can I just pick on the communications thing? What was it? What were some of the things that really stood out for you in that, in your communications study?
The one that still sticks with me all this time later is critical thinking and professional writing. So I see so many people that cannot structure their thoughts and communication in a way that they often do it either chronologically, forward or reverse, as opposed to what is the impact that I'm trying to have or the insight I'm trying to convey, and then structuring it that way, and also using poorly constructed language so that lots of cliche or terms like that, so not communicating properly.
Yeah, okay.
But critical thinking and professional writing were the two things that really struck out for me, because I have a high capacity for abstract reasoning. So for me, it was a challenge that have this racing mind and all these ideas, and then not being able to communicate them or translate them had been something that, if I hadn't have done communications, would have frustrated me to tears.
Yeah. I reckon you're right. I think it's a big gap you see, especially in leadership, that they are brilliant minds, right? They've ended up where they are, but the inability to take what's in their brain and put it in a way that people can understand. I think those who can do that well generally succeed more so, don't they?
Yeah, even the discipline of slowing down what you're thinking and pacing it. So, type 1 thinking, so fast thinking, reactive thinking, and then matching it with slow thinking to go, so how do the two match? Is really important. And also then being able to help others do that, to slow them down, or some people have a really strong fairness gene. So you see them soon as something that they think is not right or not correct, or insults them, up comes the amygdala and they're like, I'm going to do this. And you think, okay, that's good. Is that the outcome you're looking for? Like, no, but. Okay, so after but, something nonsensical is going to come out, right? That doesn't make any sense to what are you actually looking to achieve? And they're thinking in terms of, yeah, but I'm insulted by that. Right?
Yeah.
Big deal for you. Like,
yeah. And I've got that righteousness coming out of me. They need to know what
they need to understand.
Yeah,
These
that's
people
right.
need to understand. Okay, do they though?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that might be a great aspiration. It might be a good thing along the way. But what's the outcome you're trying to achieve? And it's that slowing down and reconstructing and going, what's actually the outcome you're trying to achieve, as opposed to what are you feeling like right now and what are you reacting to?
What's going on inside you?
Yeah, it doesn't mean don't react.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're programmed to do
That's
that.
that Daniel Kahneman book, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, so sorry, we digress back into your.
When I got into from uni, I worked in pizza shops, Dialadino's, back in those days, and I started, when I was 16, got my driver's license and delivered pizzas.
Brilliant.
And as a 16-year-old, I was like, I think I can. I can run this place.
Yeah.
So
was that the arrogance from a 16-year-old point of view? Yeah.
Didn't need to go to school anymore. I already knew everything. So, but I liked working, and I liked. So then I watched the owner of the store manage it, and like just watched everything he did. I was like, I can do that. And then increasingly he let me do that. And then I found that I was managing people older than me as a 16 and 17-year-old, and found that equally like super interesting. The craft of doing that super interesting. I wasn't very good at it because I was 16 and I already knew everything, and realised that people don't just do as you tell them just because you're the boss.
Yeah.
In fact, some people go the other way if you don't get that right. So, but I did that, and then I worked in a photo shop as well, and then I started doing some photography for car yards that, like along Main North Road back in those days, before we had car sales and all of that. You had car ads in newspapers. And the photos were pretty crummy.
They weren't good.
And so I started taking photos of cars for the car yards, and I loved cars, and B, I was like, this side hustle, which it wasn't called side hustle back in those days. It was just taught me a lot about people would pay a lot if you were able to do something better than they could do it for themselves. Yeah, and so you offered value for doing it, and if that value meant that they could sell cars either more quickly or at a better price because you made them look better. So again, by this stage I was maybe 21. Yeah. I'd spent a year. I'd spent a year trying to sell cinema advertising and doing the really hard, going through the yellow pages, calling businesses, trying to sell cinema advertising.
Wow. So you learn a little bit of your sales craft very early in your
early, and that hustle, and you have to get a thicker skin, be ready to put yourself out there and do all of those sort of things. So, but that was my first business, was doing photography.
That's brilliant. It's brilliant that you saw that idea, though. Like, I think, or was it something that...
It feels like it was more opportunistic than that. It was like these guys, and there's a trait that I guess I still have that both amuses and terrifies my wife, is just sort of being fairly frank, not in a rude way, I hope, but these guys were coming in and bringing their photos in, and I was like, is this for the newspaper, is it? Yeah. And they go, why, it's not very good? I'm like, no. No, okay. And, some people would either say, get lost, or other people would go, and one guy said, could you do better? I said, of course I could.
Yeah,
I had
wow.
no idea. I didn't know whether
No.
I could, but I was like, it couldn't be worse than what you've
Just need
done.
a slightly better camera than what you've got.
Yeah,
That's right.
So
with some different perspectives.
yeah. And I read some photography books, and I got a camera and went and did it better.
I love it.
So it was more opportunistic.
Were you interested in photography at all? Is this like this?
I worked in a photo shop,
okay,
so
yeah.
I was had sort of
So you had that interest there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So tell me that then grew, and then you've then gone on to starting another company after that.
well. Again, I went to Sydney with photography, not with my photography business, but I was doing. Back in those days, they had Pixie Photo and Portrait Place. It was and I was managing stores there, and then I became an area manager, and they asked me to come to Sydney, and I moved to Sydney, having never visited there.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
Landed there, just said yes.
Yep.
And again, that's probably been a theme throughout my career, is sort of like starting with yes and then figuring it out after that.
Yeah, the Richard Branson model, isn't it?
Well, I didn't know it at the time. It was just like, but also my Scottish grandmother would say things like, "Don't ask poor people how to make money." So it's like I went over to Sydney. I worked with those guys. Then there was that period in the 90s where every middle manager in the world was made redundant through TQM and all of that flat management structure stuff. So I'd moved to Sydney and 9 months later found myself redundant and going, I can't even afford to go home, let alone live here. But I went to an interview to work in a company called Australian Water Ventures, but it had it was backed by a guy called Peter Ritchie, who was the guy who was the chairman at the time of McDonald's.
Okay.
Bob Mansfield, who was the CEO of Fairfax, and Bob Joss, who was the CEO of Westpac, were all investors in this business.
So your grandma's words were coming into your head.
Yeah, and I was like, I'll do anything
Yeah.
to just work for you
Be
guys.
around these people, yeah.
Yep. So I worked with them and learned a bit about the business. It didn't go all to plan, and so that was something that I learned, was like, even the big guys don't get it right the first time. By that stage, I was 24, and I foolishly sort of said, here's what I think you should have done. Imagine that now. Like when I look at it, go, this 24-year-old going, well, here's what you should have done.
Yeah.
But
your 16-year-old self was coming back out.
But fortunately, Pete Ritchie said, all right, well, you do it then. And so I set up a thing called Edge Marketing Proprietary Limited, which was my first proper company. And I did the domestic side of the water filtration business that he and the guys still own, while they still did the commercial side, and got that up and going. He used to always say to me, make sure you've got an exit strategy. And I never understood what that meant. Well, at the time, I was like, why would I want to get out? I'm trying to build an empire that my kids can... Then the Sydney water crisis happened, and our sales went through the roof. And you could see every man and his dog then wanted to sell water filters. So there's all this competition now piling into the marketplace. And I was like, this is what exit strategy means. Because now, instead of selling water filters, I should be in the business of selling water filtration businesses. And so I was like, and my daughter came along as well. So I sold the business back into the main business and came back here in South Australia and moved home.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I got out. But that was an amazing experience for a really, at a young age, to work around those guys and understand what he invested in my business. So managing investors in your business, even understand, like I just had no previous exposure to any of that stuff.
What did it grow to, like from a people perspective, or?
Oh no, we only really grew from me to 20 people. So it wasn't massive. And
but still a reasonable size.
Yeah, and we grew from like zero to a couple of $1 million in a couple of years from scratch. So it wasn't a conglomeration, but for somebody in his 20s
It's a huge
had moved
effort,
somewhere that he'd never visited before. For me, it was really empowering. It was really good. I got ripped off. Like, I remember when we were, as the business started taking off, we'd built all our margins on floating these things from America to Australia. Then we needed them overnight, so we started flying them, and it cost more to fly them over. I had my own plumbers doing the installations, but then when the water crisis happened, we needed to go from 2 plumbers to 20 plumbers. So we started employing plumbing companies and having pallets of filters delivered to their plumbing warehouse. And then half of them disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And the guys that we had employed to do it were like, well, they never arrived. So I learned about picking, packing, fulfillment, tracking, all that stuff. I was so naive. I was just like, yeah, but you'll be good guys and deliver it. They all flogged one for themselves before they installed it.
Which you'd be learning those lessons in the e-commerce world now, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, exactly. But back then, I was just like learning. I kept the same thing to myself. This is why my dad never wanted me to be a tradesman, because I'd have no fingers left. I'd buzz one off and go, I don't know how that happened. Buzz another one off and go, I've got a suspicion it's that. This is by the third one, I'd be like, now I've only got one left.
Brilliant. So from the filtration, you come back to Adelaide. What happened then?
So then I did some. I worked with 2 people called Kate Costello and Peter Harris in a small consulting firm called Proqualis, and they were amazing. I learned so much from them, and working with them, again, when you think about this, 1999, their aspiration was to build a customer survey tool and a staff survey tool to do online surveys. Now, 99, lots of people didn't even have email addresses.
Yeah, correct.
So, and we're on dial-up speed. So online surveys that we do now, Survey Monkeys, whatever, no big deal. And I remember speaking to in 2000, speaking to the founder of Survey Monkey going, so how are you charging and how are you, building your surveys and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
And pretty much every decision that we made was different from theirs. and even their name, right? Back again, this is SARS now. Is everybody knows SARS is coronavirus and all of that sort of stuff. So, but in 2000, nobody heard of SARS. No. So ours was called the Survey and Reporting System, or SARS for short. Wow. Theirs was a stupid name called Survey Monkey. Yeah. Anyway, it started from there. Everything was not right. Yeah. The idea, though, was amazing and visionary, just not executed well.
Yeah. Okay.
But we did that, and so after we did that for a couple of years, and that didn't work out, and then I joined SYC for a year, and it was one of those things of like. Joining a not-for-profit was the antithesis of everything I thought I was going to do in my career.
Yeah. So what drew you to go there?
It was for personal reasons. I went through a relationship breakdown and thought I just need to do something nice for the world for a year and work out.
Yeah. Give back a little bit.
Yeah, and work myself out. But my job then was they just merged with another entity, and my job was to pretty much come in, sell the assets of the bit that they'd acquired to get the money back, and then shut down part of it and then grow another part of it or leave. So that part was it was a training business, and they had the previous owners of that business had bought these massive machines that nobody needed or used. So I sold them off and then started building the training business, sacked all of the customers. It was funny going through and sacking most of the customers. And the people in the business at the time were like, you can't sack all the customers, this is where our revenue comes from. So, yeah, there's lots of revenue, but there's no profit. They're all like, we spend more serving them than we make. Yeah. So we will be more profitable if we sack everybody and you stay home.
Yeah.
And that was just crazy. Not-for-profits don't talk like that.
No.
And I was like, well, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And
Because
so
it's
I
about
didn't.
impact, right? That's what.
Yeah, but I wasn't. My language then was still this sharp commercial language that was like, you idiots don't really know what you're doing because you don't make any money.
Yeah.
And it was just such a. It was. I really thought that was clever, and it was just such an arse.
Yeah.
I really was an arse then. I was thought that being commercially savvy and talking tough and doing these tough things meant you're good at business. And it was one of those things that was like, oh, funny, I've got this sharp tongue and a broken down relationship. It might be me.
Yeah. Where's the mirror?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might be me.
Yeah.
And SYC gave me the opportunity to learn a lot about the way I thought about running businesses and enterprise, the way I thought about the world around me, thought about growth and all of those different things, and gave me the opportunity to do that. And I was there for my 1 year contract, was turned over 18 times after that, 18 more times.
Well done. So did you move in as a CEO in your first year? No, you sort of
I just came in as a general manager of this ancillary business.
Yeah. So when was it when you became the CEO? How long into your
About 2 years,
2 years?
or just under 2 years. And the then CEO resigned, and the chairman rang and asked me if I would do it, and I said no.
Yeah.
That's not what I do.
Yeah.
But I said I would caretake while I found somebody else. And then once I got into it and I found like we just had so much to do. There was just so much to do. And I remember saying to the chairman, oh, no, I'll stay. And he said, no, you don't get to do that. Like you now have to go through the interview process with everybody else, which was really good for me in the sense of, again, it was another one of those cool your jets, fella, you're not as good as you think you are.
Prove yourself. Yeah.
Prove it. So I went through the interview process. Obviously, I got the job. It wasn't until much later that I found out from the chairman as he retired to say there were two experienced CEOs, and I was 33 at that stage, and these were experienced CEOs who'd applied for the job, but I got it.
They saw something in you. What was it about you that they saw?
I really cared about it.
Yeah, okay.
And I really had a very clear picture of what they needed to do if they wanted to do the kind of things that they wanted to. So SYC at its heart was about homelessness in young people and helping young people experiencing homelessness. And I had a very clear view, which at that time in not-for-profit world was less fashionable than it is now. But I had a very clear view that if you could not help, you can't help disadvantaged people if you're disadvantaged yourself as an organizer. If you're struggling to make payroll and you can't pay the best people, then you can't do the best job. So you should stop saying you can do the best job.
That's right.
Or do a better job. And I had a very clear view. And fortunately, our chairman and the board had that view as well. And we were very aligned for a long period of time, and we were very successful, which was
You did
great.
well. I think from what I have read and understood, you took it from a $500,000 turnover to 30 odd million in your time.
Well,
is that correct?
No, well, it was our balance sheet value was 420. So our members' assets value was 429,000.
Yeah.
And we were facing a deficit of 600,000 in the budget. So that was kind of numbers that didn't stack up. But
so it's really non-for-profit.
we're taking that a bit too seriously at that stage. But really, I mean, this was an organisation that had a really strong sense of identity and a really strong sense of purpose and a really good purpose, but had gone earnestly broke every decade of its existence because it was so passionate about its cause. But so we grew it, and not just me, but I was fortunate that I was the CEO at the time with good board and good people around me, We grew that to nearly $80 million turnover
80 million, yeah, well
in
done.
revenue, and a balance sheet of 30 million
Okay.
by the time I finished.
Yeah.
That took a while.
Well done.
But it was, I was very fortunate to both be in that role and have fantastic board and
No doubt.
fantastic people.
And that's what we'll go into a bit later. It's all about building the right quality team. But what I think for me, even just from my own experiences, growing pains are always always happening, and this is constant iteration. And you and I have spoken before, and you use the terminology, how do you update the plane when it's flying, right? And I found that so profound. It just, because I'm a visual person, so that just hit me. It's correct. How do you constantly iterate? How do you grow? How do you create a bigger plane while it's in mid-flight? And I'm interested to hear your thoughts of how you took SYC. What were some of the areas in which that you concentrated on most early on, and then as it grew, stabilized that out and focused on really honing in on those areas and making them world class?
The key to that story, if I start with a word that you just used, which was pain, and there's a if you're going to constantly iterate a business and constantly reinvent it, but not lose its core competence, you have to be able to manage pain. Because, and what I mean by that is cognitive dissonance. So having an idea in your head of one way of being, while at the same time not disrupting your current way of being, is often opposing thoughts.
Yeah.
And in psychology, that's called cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Another way of expressing cognitive dissonance is mental anguish.
Yeah.
So in situations of mental anguish, most people have an amygdala hijack over that, and they want to move away from the pain.
Yeah.
Because pain equals bad. But if you can tolerate it and support other people to tolerate ambiguity and that mental anguish, you can actually have them move and redesign all the reason why people don't and wouldn't redesign a plane mid-flight is because most of the people on the plane would tell you that's crazy. And it's dangerous. And here's all the reasons you won't. You won't. And so you get caught in inertia. So the first thing to notice as the leader of the business is it's your job to coax, coerce, whatever it is, to not destroy inertia, because there's a reason why those people are warning you, but at the same time not to make it safe for them to move away from inertia. And first of all, you've got to recognize who it is that's causing it. A lot of the time, people think that inertia or stubbornness or not changing is by the ignorant and the indolent and the people that are afraid. It's like, only one of those statements is correct, and that's the afraid. But they're generally the longest serving, smartest, most articulate, loyal people.
Yeah.
They're the ones that genuinely cause inertia. You go, well, why would they do that? So, well, because if you change the business or you change the organisation with experienced people who've got their jobs and their way of working, and you want to change it, well, you're moving their power base.
Yeah, correct.
And people will do almost anything for that not to happen.
Yeah.
So they will hold
Because all their plans are now out in the open, aren't they? Really.
Yep, and they're open for criticism.
Yeah.
And criticism hurts. So if you really want to change things and change the organisation, you can, was it Tony Abbott that used the phrase crash through or whatever?
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
You can crash through things, but when you crash through things, you leave a steaming pile of
mess,
right?
Yeah, correct.
That's tough but stupid.
Yeah, it is.
If you want to build something that's iteratively, sustainably growing and large and built to last. So at SYC, I realised very quickly because I listened to them. The social science professionals there kept saying, you cannot use the language that you use.
Yeah. What's that? It's just...
Well, because I kept talking about, we've got to make money and we've got to do this and we've got to be efficient and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not all.
So that was outside of the realms of what a non-for-profit should be speaking about, wasn't it?
At the time, yeah. And it was right. And I kept saying, yeah, but you can't go broke either.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're the CEO. You sort that out.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's actually my job to figure out what's this ambidextrous challenge of on one hand, being reliable and the same, and at the same time being innovative and different at exactly the same time, and making those two things coexist.
Yeah.
And making people, hard-nosed commercial people, work with hard-nosed social science people who most times don't coexist. But if you can make that coexist by building and holding and maintaining and encouraging relationships and ways of thinking, and always challenging those ways of thinking to say, you're not wrong. You don't have to be sick to get better. You're not wrong. You're just not right.
Yeah.
And having the answer is a futile exercise. Having an answer for now is good enough.
Yeah.
And keep moving.
Yeah. I've always had this idea though, like, and it's a typical sales analogy, but it's also from a commercial point of view. Like if you're not willing to grow and invest and make money, right? Or if you're not willing to sell, then you forfeit the right to make an impact.
Yeah.
Like that's how it's kind of you cannot have an impact. You not start a non-for-profit or a social enterprise business and want to change the world, but just in the hope that people buy into the cause. There has to be some revenue that sort of turns this over.
Well, so hope is an interesting word. Particularly, it gets thrown around in not-for-profit land as well. Hope, and there's that famous line of hope is not a strategy.
Correct.
So there's lots of, the thing that I was really good at is I really cared about the aspiration for helping homelessness and people experiencing homelessness or unemployment. But the bit that I think I brought was saying, okay, so rather than hope this is going to happen, let's back solve how it is going to happen. Let's imagine it working. If you could wave a magic wand, what do you want to do, and what do you want to achieve? And let's back solve from there, and then go. So what's your program logic? If you've got an outcome in mind and a program logic then in mind, then what are the core competencies that need to be true to make that work? And we'd back solve from that all the time. It's great that you've got this soaring language and this soaring idea and all of that sort of stuff. Let's tell me, when do you think, how long would it take to do that? Yeah. And let's back solve and just being able to break it down into its component pieces, but not breaking it down into, so what is the work? People dive straight into, so what is the work?
What
and
are
they
the
want to
actions
problem solve.
Yeah, that's right.
As if problem solving creates something. Very rarely, I would wager, very rarely will you meet someone who's really successfully built something who says that problem solving is how they got there.
It doesn't work that way.
Problem solving just renovates a shitty idea and makes it look better.
Yeah.
Solution creation is when you sit in problems, and rather than just try and solve each one that happens, to look for patterns in all of those problems. And this is the ambidextrous challenge, right?
Yeah.
If there are problems that are dangers, you better employ people to
solve them
real quick.
Yeah.
You don't have to solve all of them, and you don't have to have everyone in the business jump in the hole every time they see it. Just just send Daniel for that one.
Yeah.
The rest of us stay here and stay calm.
Correct. Yeah.
And you see that chaotic kind of management all the time, but it just lacks leadership, it lacks vision, it lacks communication, and it lacks care.
So I'm super curious about your role as a CEO and the journey that you went on. You know, you've come from a 16-year-old that believes he can run. You know,
I had a piece of paper literally that said, "I'm going to be a CEO."
there you
when
go.
I was 16.
Brilliant. I love it. So you have this. Actually, on that, how did it feel when you finally became a CEO?
When I first had the title CEO, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. So, because did you still have the piece of paper, or did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you carry it around in your wallet or something?
No, I carried. I had it in a wooden box with some toy cars that I'd kept from when I was a kid and some Weet-Bix cards that they used to have in Weet-Bix packets.
We can edit that out if you want.
But I still had it in a box.
Brilliant. Oh, that's so good. You set yourself a goal. I love that, and that's visionary. It's finest. So
I became a CEO, and I thought, it's funny. I thought at that stage a couple of things. One was, this is the start, not like this.
Yeah.
This is the start for me, and it was a big responsibility.
Yeah.
I also thought what I noticed, because I'm a short guy who wears glasses that so people started paying attention that otherwise weren't paying attention before, and I was suspicious of that.
Yeah.
And I took the responsibility really, really seriously. But I remember another thing, thinking of like, but this isn't a proper CEO. And that plagued that sort of doubt plagued me for the first few years of doing it, particularly when I was the CEO of SYC, going, yeah, but I'm not. This is not what I had. This narrative. This isn't what I do.
Yeah.
So this isn't really being a CEO. And
where does that harsh criticism come from? I have the same thing. We've got this beautiful new office. People walk in, and the first thing I say, it's not finished yet. Like, why is it that we have that continuous criticism that just carries off in our head?
Interesting. I used to ask that question a lot as well. And the same person that told me just to start being a proper CEO then was the same person who said,
so true, right? Is it?
Stop, don't do why.
Yeah.
Like this constant, why am I doing that? Why? He said, don't stop doing why. What does it matter? It's just you. Just start being a proper CEO.
But what's the why question? When you say
don't do why, as in, so why am I like that? Why am I not satisfied with that? You're going, your brain will answer that question, and it'll come up with stupid answers.
Yeah.
And then
but it's irrelevant. Is that what?
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's not irrelevant if you are constant. Like when I was constantly having challenges when I was a young leader, sort of having challenges with people not following me, sort of going, look, there's this very clear path. It's really obvious. What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
It's like, maybe the matter with me is I didn't collaborate with them at all or bring them along, or I didn't care about their why for coming along, all of that sort of stuff. But I think the thing that I became really clear on is I was asking, I would constantly ask myself, why was I doing that? And you do this thing, and I still do it now. It's like, why did you say that, you idiot? Or why did you do that?
It's like going off in my head every day.
Yeah, beating yourself to death. And it's like, stop doing that. Like, just, it doesn't mean don't interrogate reality, don't hindsight review, don't do all that. But don't do this thing where you're like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I say this? I just get that sometimes I'll go, I might have been a bit frank there, or I also learned through SYC that I glare at people when I'm listening really intently, so I had to learn to do that. But the thing when I got the advice of stop doing this, I'm not a proper CEO, and just be a proper CEO, the moral of that for me was to two words that stick in my mind all the time: refuse and decide. And so what he was saying was, if you always wanted to be a CEO and now you're one, but now you're undermining it by saying I'm not a proper one, just decide that you are. and then decide to be a better one. And I was like, you hide in this self-doubt where you're saying, oh, I'm doing this sort of worthy thing by questioning and not being too arrogant and not being da-da-da. It's like, no, you're not. You're really hiding. Just decide that you are.
It's like light bulb moments just gone off in my head. It's an excuse in case things go wrong, isn't it? It was like, I was never a proper CEO anyway. Like, yeah.
I was learning. I was like, just decide. And
I love that. That's
and then
so good.
as people then start saying, well, Daniel, you're not really properly a CEO because experienced CEOs do X, Y, and Z. You go, well, of course, I can't make experience happen any faster. You tell me.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people who are telling you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. It's so funny. Like yesterday, we had a board meeting, right? And for Synergy IQ, the business that I run, and I sat in the room, and it's the first time like I've been CEO, MD, whatever my title is in that space, and I remember thinking, I was like, every extra dollar this business makes, it's the biggest business I've ever run. Every time we hire a new person, it's the biggest business I've ever run. I'm learning, I'm iterating, I'm trying to figure this out as I go along. Is the board pack right? Is everything like, is it, what, and there's so much, I put so much pressure on myself. And there was the two people on our advisory board yesterday that said, Dan, like, you're doing well. Like, have you ever walked into a boardroom and everything's been so smooth and so perfect? You guys are like, and so there was just this, oh, okay, because you get real frantic. You want to do everything perfect. You want to impress people. Your ego comes into play. What are people thinking about me? Am I doing this right? And there's so many internal emotions.
When you get someone say, I'm deeply suspicious when people says, oh, it's because I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I go, are you? That's a really good way to hide.
Yeah.
Because being a perfectionist means you can't really criticize me for getting something wrong. Because I know it was wrong, but I was working on it.
Okay.
It's like, relax. Being a perfectionist means that you have this really big challenge of perfection being the enemy of progress. And you're really liable to get stuck all the time.
Yeah.
As opposed to going, I like excellence. Like, that's excellent. That's as good as I can do. My job now is to find somebody who's more excellent than me at that, and I'll just keep moving rather than getting bogged, because I used to get stuck.
Did you ever, when you got stuck, did you ever think to yourself, like, I'm not cut out for this? Like, this
all the time.
Yeah.
I still do.
You still do? Yeah. Is that something that ever goes?
No.
And why is that? Is it the internal? Why? Because there are some people who don't have that, or am I just in belief that they don't have that?
I don't know the answer to that. I see lots of people that don't want to. I don't know, push, or they just have different priorities. For me though, it's like that worked, that could work better. Yeah. And then if that worked better, then what are other people doing? Am I doing, is what I'm doing better than anybody else? And so it's just that, whether it's a bit of competitiveness or
it's
all of those different things, or it's the you wanting to do well, like because from in your upbringing you've been told you need to do better, or it's a combination of all of those sort of things.
Yeah.
But you get to a point where you are at peace with the fact that it's not that I'm unhappy, it's just that I'm not satisfied with that. But it used to be that you get lots of people saying, I just want to be happy, which sets this polarity that unhappiness is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a bad thing.
Happiness is a fleeting thing, isn't it? Like, you can't.
I'm happy every day, and I'm glad for that. But again, that's the thing you decide when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
It's not something you sort of go, oh, I hope today makes me happy. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
Just decide it, and you'll be surprised at the end of the day that you are.
I mean, being a CEO is difficult role, right? And there's a lot of moving parts, and it creates a lot of anxieties, and it can create a lot of self-focus, like internal sort of focus. And
if you've decided to be a CEO, you've also decided you can soak up more stress than just about anybody right?
It's pretty
tough on you.
It's pretty enchanting. Yeah, it does take over. What I'm really interested in is, like, out of those anxieties, metrics are one thing that I find myself getting attached to, and whether it's revenue, whether it's the constant trend of up, and I really attach myself to those metrics. And when they're not going the way that I would like them to, then I start feeling that in myself, right? And is there a metric outside of revenue that you sort of concentrated in and honed in on? Like, was it culture? Was it, I don't know, something that you did outside of work? Was there something that you honed in on to help you level out that playing field in regards to, I need to deliver and consistently deliver, and every time I get a win, I'm not going to celebrate it because we can still do this and we can still get better and there's still more to do, and the finish line just keeps not getting further and further away, but every sort of increment, it just keeps stretching out. So how did you manage that thought process in your...
There's so much in that. Whether there's a whole bunch of measures that you use and use interchangeably, whether it's your P&L, whether it's your sales performance, whether it's your leading indicators, your lagging indicators, whether it's your balance sheet, your cash flow, whether it's culture, and we'll come back to measuring culture, this idea of measuring culture, whether it's risk, whether it's health and safety, you've got all of these different measures, and often people say, but what's the most important one? So, okay, so there's a phenomena here that you're looking for, and that is what you're looking for is certainty.
Something to grab on,
something to hold on to that is certain, because you're not managing ambiguity anymore. You're uncomfortable, you're feeling pain, so you want certainty.
Yeah,
and certainty is a false idol. So you can get your P&L right and whatever. You killed half your customers getting it, or prospective customers getting it, but you got it right. So it's a false.
Yeah, it is.
It's a false god. You've got to have all of them, and you're looking at them all the time, and you're balancing them all the time. So I'm very driven by metrics and how they're fitting into the strategy, how they're fitting into tactics. But I'm also a big believer in changing your mind if they're not working. So lots of people get really fixated on, but that's the target.
That's the metric,
What's that target serving? Is it serving our purpose?
Yeah.
Well, you can't change it halfway through. It's like, well, you can. There's things called rolling budgets where you redesign the budget every quarter based on smarter information to make better decisions along the way. And people are like, but you've got to have a 12-month budget. Otherwise, it's like, why? Because everybody else has got one and they told you to, and you're insecure about whether everybody knows what they're doing if you don't have it. And now you're getting into territory of, what do you mean? So you don't have a quality of talk in your team that can constantly iterate and have people looking at the rear guard today and forward at the same time, and you don't have trust that communication's working well. That's why you need some benchmarks to hold on to, because there's not that they can't do it, it's because you don't trust them to do it, or you don't communicate with them well enough or have a relationship well enough that you can trust them to all work together all the time. And that is hard work. Like, that's just, often people think the CEO is the shepherd. The CEO is not the shepherd. The CEO is the sheepdog.
Yeah, that's right.
The chairman's the chairman's the shepherd.
Yeah.
You're the sheepdog. You're constantly running around. The sheep run off, and you've got to go back.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to glare at them and go, don't.
Yeah.
You watch what a sheepdog does. They don't chase sheep all the time. Half the time they're lying down staring at the sheep going, I dare you. They've all sorts of different tactics to do it. And that's the quality of talk, quality of relationship, quality of thinking, communicate. And often your job is just to assure people you're on the right path.
Yeah.
My big weakness, though, in that often is that I can see where we're going, like it's like a movie in my head.
You're 3 steps ahead, and
Yeah.
then you've got to let other people make the mistakes.
But if you're over the curve, shouting back at everybody, "Hey, hurry up!" but they can't see you and they can't see what you see, and it's been a while since you came back to get them, you shouldn't be surprised that they're all in a huddle, standing still, waiting, going, "Well, we'll just wait for you to come back."
Wow.
And if you come back, if you're the one coming back, going, "What's the matter with you people?" It's like, well, it might be you.
That's so real. Like it's funny because you when you start noticing the little fractures or cracks within a business or within your own business, the first thing that really always comes to my mind is, when's the last time that I've had a conversation, like a proper conversation, or when's the last time that I've been really clear or I've held accountability in place? And it might have been that I've lacked, things have come up, you move office, whatever it might be, that you're so busy, the world's a crazy place. And you go, actually, there's been a month here or there's been a couple of weeks here that I haven't had a proper conversation, which is what's creating the ambiguity, which is what's creating the frustrations, which is what's creating. So I'm over the hill, right? I've got to come back. And I think you're right. You got to be the sheepdog. You got to walk side by side.
And you when you come back and having a proper conversation, so dysfunction happens politely, and it usually happens, and teams start falling apart when they like each other a lot, and so we get this sense of, I don't want to upset Daniel. I know he made a mistake, and I don't want to upset him by saying that because I know he's a bit sensitive about it. I don't know how to talk about it, so we just politely ignore it and hope it goes away. Well, we all know it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
But what's in evidence now is polite dysfunction, and being able to call out polite dysfunction is an amazingly important skill that is evolved over time, and you've got it, and it's risky. But it's really important.
Because you build these relationships. But shouldn't a trusting relationship, that should be easier to have that? Or does it get too far over the hill that you go, now it's a mess?
It's not set and forget like that. It changes depending on, what their partner said, for example, or their friend said about it. They change. So you've got to constantly calibrate, recalibrate all the time.
So in those conversations, right, there is absolute, like if you're talking about that dysfunction, there is absolute chance that you're going to upset a few people, right? And you're not going to be the most liked person within the company. And I think that's something that we see in the work that we do. I am definitely fallen in this trap a few times myself, that you want to be the most liked person in the business. You want everyone to agree with you, and you want everyone to share the vision that you share and understand the path that you're trying to, or the strategy that you've put in place, or the business has put in place. And so there is that nicety that comes in. It's like, I don't want to piss people off because I want to make sure that they are coming along the ride with me and they're doing what we need them to do and all the above. How did you manage that accountability piece and the conversation piece? Was it always about what's best for business, or was it, what was your blend, or did you have a model that you used?
So it's not binary like that. First of all, having a combined purpose is super important. But as I was thinking about it then, and as you're talking about being liked, I think a really unfashionable word, and a word that makes people really squeamish in corporate sense, is love. We talk about it in terms of passion for, like, I love what I do, and I love doing this and doing that. But in terms of, if you think about running your enterprise and you want people to like you, and if you're seeking like all the time, it's going to be dysfunctional. If, for example, as a parent, I spend, and you see this a lot, right? And I'm not trying to say that be paternalistic about being a CEO, like being a parent, and all that sort of stuff. But there's lessons there, right? If you see these parents who run around after their kids, wanting their kids to, are terrified their kids might not like them. It's like, you raise pretty bratty kids when you want them to like you all the time, when that's what you're obsessed with. So you want your kids to love you and know that you love them. So really what that is they want to be secure in the status of the relationship, so you can push the bounds of like. Because have you ever worked with people that are really talented, but they're a bit afraid, they're a bit nervous, they're a bit insecure, and you've given them a push and they haven't really liked it, but then they've been successful and then they like you for that and they thank you for that, but at the time they didn't thank you for it.
Yeah.
You'll never do that if you're pursuing like. You'll never push people to do better, be their limit. You'll also never push people to the point of their incompetence, which is often, to the limit of their skills, if you're pursuing like. So you're always going to have your business stuck at the limit of the weakest skills of the person you don't push. And so sometimes when you're pushing, they're now saying, I can't do it, and you've got to make a decision. And these are decisions that nice people don't like, which is, but I like Daniel. And I like him, and people around here like him. Yeah. But he can't.
He's not.
He got us here. He's part of the fabric of the business, and he's come all the way with us. And I don't want to be the person to tell him, but he's not part of what got us here, won't get us there. And we have to deal. So you do this thing, and I've done it so many times, where you hang on to people who've reached their limit 2 years ago. Yeah. You like them, and they're good people, and they're so dedicated. And then something, it either becomes dysfunctional, or it breaks, or it becomes heartbreaking. The minute your heart doesn't break for people who you really like in the business, but have reached their level of incompetence and need to either move on or be reskilled or do a different, or realise this is as far as it goes for you. Like, this is your role in the business, and this is what we need. All those conversations are genuinely caring conversations, and they're difficult. Lots of people, so many people avoid that, so they're stuck.
What happens in the scenario where you believe the person's hit their boundary, but that person believes they haven't?
Well, then you have to have a conversation about that with them. And if you don't agree, then one of you needs to leave. So if they're going to stay and the business is going to stay where it is, and you're not interested in working in a business that's going to stay where it is, then maybe you should leave. Yeah. If, however, you're in charge of it and you want to see that business continue to develop, and that person is saying, well, this is I can do it, and they can't. Like,
do you give them the chance though? Still, do you say, right, I'm going? So I need 20% more from you, right? And they deliver 5%. Where do you sit? Are you in an awkward position again? They have improved, but it's not what I need. What do you do in that space?
So again, I'm pretty patient.
I'm talking from a CEO's point.
I'm pretty patient in the sense of, well, help me understand how our expectations don't match. So I'm expecting this, you're delivering this. So I want you to just help me understand whether I need to lower my expectations because there are conditions, there are staffing. I had dinner with a guy a couple of weeks ago who was saying, he said some anachronistic sort of views on human resources, right? You don't need HR team or people if you've got managers who can manage. It's like, okay, well, that's technically correct. However, if you don't invest in any training for your managers and you're running on pretty thin margins and you can't afford to pay really highly qualified managers and all of that sort of stuff, then you need
That's right. Yeah.
a backstop.
And you expect them to deliver on the technical element of the work as well, not
So
just manage people.
If you're not going to invest in them and you're not going to develop them, you're not going to pay them properly, then you're going to have these compromises. So what you're really doing is you're having to manage your own expectations. And so if they delivered 5% and you're looking for 20, you can't assume that just because you want 20, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Or maybe it could be a timing variance.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to get 20, they'll go 5, 10, 15, 20, and it's an impatience issue, if you like. Just understanding doing root cause analysis into the. But if 5% is as good as it's going to get, and you're hearing all of these excuses, and you know the difference between commentary on people's failure to deliver and actual reasons. If that's persistent and they can't see that they're constantly bringing you reasons why it can't be achieved, as opposed to here's how I can do it or here's how I can recalibrate.
Yeah, what I'm trying
After
differently.
a while, you have to have a conversation about, is this really for you?
Yeah, 100%.
And they're hard. People don't like those, particularly if you're mates or you get on really well. Or,
especially, one thing that is also, so within this is, you're holding people account and you're trying to create clarity. We've talked about communication being a critical piece. You're obviously very well and experienced in the communication aspect. How do you communicate with a team, or as a CEO, when you put out a message, and account for all the different sort of brain thinking styles that are in the team? Do you when you said just go and be the best CEO, do you write the email or do you write the strategy, or is it just to the best how I think, or do you take in all the different thinking styles? I don't want to put too many metrics in there because people won't think about it, or I don't want to put too many fluffy stuff because people might not. I've got more engineers in my team, whatever it might be. How do you manage your communication with an organisation and hope to have the most throughput and delivering what you're actually trying to?
So culture change and strategy is a contact sport. It's not. It is.
It's absolutely.
It is belly to belly, eye to eye.
Yeah.
So any CEO or person purporting to be a leader who goes away, designs a strategy or a plan, sends an email or creates a glossy brochure or puts it on the website and expects all the staff to read it and then go along with it is deluded.
Absolutely.
Like it is. People. Do you know why no country's ever won a war just with an air force?
What?
Is because you need boots on the ground to occupy space.
Yeah.
To win over hearts and minds, to genuinely change things. You cannot win by leaflet dropping. You cannot win ever by flying over the top and hounding people into submission.
Yeah.
They will just regenerate because they're on the ground belly to belly having conversations. You have to do that all the time.
That's the hope thing that's coming into play.
It's hope.
Yeah.
And it's arrogance. And it's superiority. It's this superior thinking of like, I've got this really great thinking because look, I wrote it in a book and I put it on a website and you should read it. It's deluded. It's egotistical. Sitting down with everybody and going, so here's what I think the strategy is. Here's what I think the goals and the outcomes we can achieve are. Here's why I think we're doing it. What do you think? And having the patience to go, everybody has different views of that. They can. Some people have such low abstract reasoning that they need you to spell it out for them. Other people can imagine it. But everybody's got a different way of looking at it. And if you're so impatient that you can't do it yourself and sit with them and then find people who do within their departments and manage it. But your leadership team, if they are then saying, well, we were in a meeting with Daniel and we did this strategy work and we've all decided this is what it is. Read the brochure. Don't be surprised if it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because they're not showing leadership. It's really got to be in their hearts and minds and on the ground. And that's a constantly iterative thing. The thing then is people go, so you've got this strategy, you've got these tactics, you've got the outcomes, and then it still doesn't get done because you didn't do the work on what's called sticking the landing. So you took your plane off, you designed it, you drew it, you said, here's the destination. So you got your plane, you all take off, and the bit you failed to do was go landing gear.
Yeah.
Shit, got to do landing gear.
Yeah.
So how do you land? Where do you land? All of that all of that communication happens when people then feel that part of it and they feel included and that they've got landing gear. They'll take off in nearly anything with you because they know you're going to land them safely.
Yeah, they feel safe. That's right.
A lot of the people get caught up when you think about airline traveling on airlines. That it's got to be on time and the airport and getting through security and what food did I get and what were the seats like and all of those different things.
Yeah.
You know the most important thing?
Landing safely.
Getting there alive.
That's right.
Yeah. We land most of the time.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
That is so true.
Yeah.
So true. Do you, again, how do you manage that process of, because you talked about culture and you talked about being a contact sport, and I love that. Is that what you're saying? I mean, this is what we do from our world, is that we educate. So I understand that creating an awareness through input, right? Like you said, having people speak, because you don't actually need to really always listen not listen. You don't need to actually do what they say or the inputs that are coming your way, but it's the simple fact that you've listened and you've taken on board their voice is the most critical piece.
And demonstrated that you have.
And demonstrated. And tell me about demonstrating. What is your...
So I get nerdy about models.
Yeah.
So I talked about if you've got a vision or something, an impact you're trying to have, then there's a logic model, the Harvard Impact Logic Model, where you define your impact and then you say what the outcomes are that need to be achieved to have that impact. And there are outputs that lead to that outcome, and then there is activities that lead to those outputs, which lead to those outcomes, which help you achieve. And then there are inputs which have to fund the activity. So there's a logic model to that, right? And then you apply a program logic to that, which is simply your sticking the landing. That's your flight plan and all of that. So you got your program logic, you've got your impact model, and then you can design all those brilliant things, step by step, Gantt charts, all of those different things. Then the only thing standing between you and achieving that is people who'll screw it up. That's your only job.
Yeah.
So your only job then, and so then what are the things, and those people want certainty. They want to make sure that if they get it wrong or they fall out of pace or fall out of speed or don't understand it or all that sort of stuff, that they're going to be safe or included. And they want certainty around that. You can't offer certainty around that because they might not.
That's right.
So why would you not be upfront with that and say, look, not everybody is going to be able to do this, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you are, whether it's through training, through support, through listening, through adjusting, all those sort of things. But in the event that there are three sort of aspects. If you can, do it. If you can't, help me notice it so I can teach you.
Yeah.
If you can but you won't, and you're going to start now holding us back, you need to leave because won't is a choice. And you're now out of step with us.
Yeah.
So that conversation's got to happen all the time. But the other thing as well is around making sure that people are coming along and not screwing it up with you. Is you've got to understand like what's going on for them, and that changes dynamically all the time. And if you don't know or you don't listen for it, don't be surprised if
they jump off the bus.
They jump off, or they hold you back, or they do all those different things.
Yeah.
But we get so caught up in strategic plans, business plans, projections, and all that sort of stuff because your funders, whether they're bankers or investors or all of that sort of stuff, tell you that that's what they've got to see.
Yeah.
And they're telling you that that's what they're going to see because they want certainty. What do they want certainty of? That you're a happy camper, that your staff are they don't want certainty that you're not going to lose their money.
Yeah.
They want certainty that their dividend, or they want certainty that their investment is. So they want all of those certain things. So we get obsessed with delivering those things because we've got to report them to a board and all. But I can promise you nearly none of that is what makes you successful or your people successful. It is them believing in what they're doing and understanding what competence they've got to demonstrate to make that happen. So doing the work is not enough. Oh, but Daniel, I did the work you told me and I got 5% better. That's the best you can expect. No, it's not. What is the competence that I'm asking you to demonstrate to get 20% growth? I asked for 20% growth. You got 5%. What are you thinking is the gap between the 5 and the 20? Because this is the competence that I'm asking.
Yeah.
I want you to be thinking about how
You spell it out to me.
you tell me how you're going to get there, or you tell me what you need from me to help you get there.
Yeah.
We often miss those conversations, and you don't have them by flying past or just looking at metrics. You have them talking to people really well.
How do you go about in that scenario where you're talking to those people, and within that you've got some underperformers, you've got some overperformers, you've got some aspirational people, you've got people who are just happy to come in and do a role. Like there's all different types of personalities that come into a business and make it up. In the one thing that's always in my mind is one of my core values is growth, and I constantly have this idea of improving myself and always moving myself up a ladder, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know. Yeah, it's this make-believe ladder. And so that internal growth and desire to improve and seek enjoyment out of the work that I do is something that I always think about when I'm talking with the team members, or even when you talk with other CEOs and other customers and clients, our client base. Is there a rule book or a playbook, I should say, around how do you manage the different expectations of all the different people that you work with, and particularly the C-suite or the executive team, the leadership team? There are some that are so aspirational, and when I, even my own personality trait, I hear people are aspirational, I gravitate towards them. But then there are some that are, I'm just really happy delivering what I'm delivering, and I'm happy in this world or in my bubble or whatever it might be. And I find myself going, well, no, there's more, right? There's more. And how do you manage that thought process when you're working with your executive team and the different personalities that are within there and the different aspirations that are in there?
There's, when you hear people say, I treat people the way I want to be treated myself.
Yeah, it's a fallacy. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I love this.
Oh, man. Like, don't treat me like you treat yourself.
Yeah. Treat me how I want to be treated.
You don't want me to treat you like I treat myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm really hard on myself.
That's exactly
so you don't want me to do that to you. Yeah. So this notion of and also people like them. So they do gravitate to people who, that's why social media has become such a dangerous echo chamber, right? Because it's just like flocks people who sound like them, and it's eroding discourse and curiosity. And so from a leadership point of view, it's that curiosity that's got to drive, how do I align expectations? And so when you think about expectations, they're not binary. Expectations live within what I would refer to as a zone of tolerance. And some people have a really high tolerance for expectations being variable. And other people have a really narrow band of, it's almost binary, like you either did it or you didn't.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be able to map where everybody's zone of tolerance is for expectation deviation. Because if you've got a powerful but otherwise invisible person with a narrow zone of tolerance who's decided they're going to make the business work the way they want to work. For example, you could have super salespeople, super business development people, super operations people, and all of that sort of thing. You could have super logistics people, super CX people. But you've got somebody who sits in an office in the dark who is the policy and audit person.
Yeah.
Who's decided how they think things should work.
Yeah.
They can pretty much mess up everybody else. And they'll do it quietly, and they'll all these different things. If, on the other hand, you've got salespeople or you've got people out the front saying, all you people behind only have jobs because I make you money, they need to leave. Like, seriously, it's damaging because your zone of tolerance is being disrespected the whole time. As the CEO, your job is to look at that map of all those individuals or all those individual groups, and you've got to understand what that zone of tolerance is for each group, because your job is to bring them all along.
How did you learn that, though? How did you learn to do that and look at that way?
I pushed myself to be educated, both whenever interestingly, we got to, you mentioned something earlier about every iteration of your business is a bigger operation than you've ever run before.
Yeah.
I got to a point in 2015 at SYC where we had grown it to a point where it was a fairly large organisation. It was the biggest organisation I'd ever run. And we were working really hard on a strategy to double that again. And it was already the biggest thing I'd ever run. And it was really clear as well. We were implementing quality systems and putting all that governance in place. But we were getting to a size where there was stuff that I didn't understand. Things like really complex risk management I knew at a basic level. We were getting into proper multi-dimensional risk management and consequences and all of those sort of things. We were moving to be a company limited by guarantee. So for all intents and purposes, a public company, just not listed.
Yeah.
And all of the compliance. And I was like, I don't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with how, gosh, I need to know all that stuff. Which is a bit like why people do MBAs. Like, I want to be a manager one day, so I'll do an MBA. It's like, it didn't solve your problem, did it?
No.
Because it wasn't the actual problem.
No.
So I remember going to the board and saying, we're at a point now where you either need to sack me and the executive and get people who know what they're doing in terms of running a bigger business, or we need to go and learn how to be these big, like, elite managers.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to be like that competitive streak. I don't want to just go and learn it. I want the elite version of it, and I want to be with the elite guys doing it and see where I stack up.
Hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
So I went to the board with a proposal to take my leadership team to Stanford Business School.
Yeah.
As a not-for-profit.
So good.
And at the time, can you imagine? They're like, wait,
what?
You mean in America, all of you? It's like, yeah. As a group. Yeah. Because that's the elite. That's the elite group. LCOR, Leading Change in Organisational Renewal, is the elite program for change in organisation. People from Boeing, Apple, like the elite go there for that program. So that's what I want to do. But I want it not just me, because I've done, and all of us as CEOs have done the professional development where you go learn and then you come back and you're so excited you tell everybody about it. So you fly past, do a leaflet drop of what you've learned, and then you go, none of them listened.
Yeah. What are they?
Funny that.
Yeah.
So I took them, and interestingly, it was a lot of money, and
how long
did
they go for, this course?
10 days.
10 days, yeah.
And so I just did a simple equation of, if we don't change and we lose, how much would you pay to tender for a $500 million contract over 5 or 6 years? So you'd spend $2 million just tendering for it. So, okay, well, we're talking about less than 10% of that. Investing in case. Imagine if we won. Imagine if we tendered for it and then we won, and then we lost it because we didn't know how to run it.
Yeah.
Then imagine if all the recruitment you're going to have to do to replace the idiots that won it but then screwed it up, and the auditors you're going to have to get to. Like, this is.
There's a big cost.
It's a big cost to that, right? And
it's
one of those things of, what if you don't invest in their skills and they stay?
Yeah.
So the board, and this is why I've been very fortunate to have always have wonderful chairmen or chair people and wonderful support from the board. They said yes.
Yeah.
And we went to this elite school, and we found out that only 3 organisations in 20 years had come as a team.
Yeah, wow.
Most of the time they sent the CEO or the COO or one executive at a time. We were one of only 3 that had ever gone as a group. And they said, that was wonderful and expensive and brave. And I was like, brave? And for the next 10 days, when you're a CEO, just getting your strategy and your change journey and all of your skills and your culture pulled apart in front of your team, it's like one of the
You're naked.
toughest experiences ever. Like, I would ring my wife every night. She'd go, "Are you enjoying it?" I'm like, "No." Like, I really am not enjoying it at all. But it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so you're really...
What was it like? What was you...
Oh, man. So they would really... For example, they would really struggle with some stuff that I could see.
Yeah.
And so I would lean in and say, "Here's how you do it." And our lecturer and our mentor would say, "Paul, push your chair back. Stop saving them."
Get out of there, yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, but I paid a shitload of money for them to be here." And he's like, "Push your chair back. You've got to learn to support them to be able to do this without you constantly diving in and adjusting them and saving them and teaching them." And that was really hard.
That's profound, yeah.
For me it was really hard for me to do. But part of the lesson there as well is, like, he was holding a mirror up to how controlling I was and how actually my controllingness of this and rescuing them and doing all that sort of stuff was holding them back. But it was also it was preserving my power as the smartest guy in the room. Unconsciously, but it was. It's like, so he kept saying, "Push your chair back." And I had to sit and listen to this thing going, Paul jumps in and does this. Or whenever this happened, Paul jumps in and does that. We just wait for him to do that. I'm like, this is really humiliating to go through. And it's a really solid reflection of you.
Do you think you would have learned more or less if you went by yourself?
I wouldn't have understood any of that.
No.
I would have come back and have been this genius superhero with a thing from Stanford and have the jumper.
And still had the power-driven...
More power, because I knew stuff that they didn't know.
You thought you were elite now, yeah.
And I thought I was elite, yeah. My ego would have been massive.
Bloated, yeah.
Whereas I came back going, whoa, now. And out of all of those people, 3 of us really were able to stay in the business for various different reasons. So of 7 people that went, 3 stayed.
Yeah, wow.
But man, we were good.
Yeah,
we're really good. And the people that didn't stay, it's not because they were not good as well. It just didn't work out. But then when we won and we continued to be successful afterwards, the amount we spent and the pain we went through was nothing. It turned out to be nothing.
Yeah, brilliant.
But yeah, that constant push. I've always pushed myself to learn, but also to put myself. So I've been fortunate to study at Harvard. I've been fortunate to study at Stanford, and it's not about sort of. I always preface when I say that. It's like, I know I'm just about to sound like a massive wanker when I say that I've been there. It's not about going there. It's about, like, where is the best place with the smartest people that I can put myself. where I'm going to be terrified.
Yeah. If you're going to do it, you do it, right?
Yeah.
Don't do it half-assed.
Frighten yourself.
It's all in.
Yeah.
I want to, I'm just conscious of your time because you do have to shoot off half an hour. So I want to ask, there's some questions that I'm dying to ask, but thank you for sharing that story because you're right. The continuous learning and growth as a CEO, if you're not investing in self, then you're in the wrong position.
And learning humility,
100%.
Tolerating being told lets you, and this is going to be super important in the next 5 years as this generational shift in employees, in business, in the world at the moment. There's this generational shift going on between all of us, all those people who were born in the 20th century and all those people who were not born in the 20th century. And there's language and thoughts and cultural ideas that are completely incompatible with each other, that if you're in a leadership position and you are not really alert to that, or you're not respectful of it, or not giving it the respect that it deserves, you're going to be in trouble.
Here, well said. I want to just ask a few scenarios, and then I want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing at Vino, Mofo as well. But the scenario is, I'm appointed as CEO of a new company, relatively small company, 20-odd people. We spoke about your previous business, 20-odd people. Sales and marketing is at a lower point of maturity. The board and the owners and the founders or whatever have huge, aspirations and growth aspirations. And there's a product that actually there's something here, right? I could do something with this. The team's good. The people you adopt are in the right positions. Obviously you got to make a few choices here and there, but things are pretty comfortable. But now it's just about growth, right? What is your role as a CEO walking into that position?
Wow, you really are in a spot now. This is where the expectation management. So what does growth look like? What does growth mean in that terms? Because it's just a generic term, right? So are you looking to grow sales? You're looking at growing profit? Are you looking at growing wealth? Are you looking at growing security? What's your tolerance for risk across the business, whether it's from the board, your own tolerance for risk, and the tolerance for risk of the people within the business? How are all those things lining up? Do you all mean so it's all about language now.
Yeah.
When you say growth, do you all mean the same thing? And the answer is no.
No.
So what do you mean then? And it's your really role, and it will take some time to work out. So how do we create a growth trajectory that fits with all the competencies and aspirations and expectations that we have? And
you're right, because some are growing just to be a sustainable business, but some are growing to build an empire, right?
Yeah.
Two different.
Some are growing for an exit, a liquidity event.
Correct. Yeah.
Some are growing because, and in terms of then what's your growth strategy? So it depends on, once you've defined what growth means to you all, then the next question is, who does that make you? So once you've decided on what your growth thing is together, who does that make you? Because when you come to that, who does that make you, it informs your strategy. So let's say...
So who does that make you as in... As a person
business?
Or as a business?
No, as a business.
Yeah.
So as a business. So let's say you're a retailer.
Yeah.
And you have a growth strategy that is to become the biggest retailer in Australia. So to do that, you will grow organically your retail business, but your total addressable market is probably wider than the brand you have. So you probably, if you then look at Wesfarmers, for example, they would have all these brands and they'll run a house of brands to do that, because those different brands speak to different parts of the addressable market. Essentially, though, if all of those brands are all retailers, then you're using what's called a stacking strategy. You're stacking retail on top of retail on top of retail on top of retail. So if your growth plan is to be the biggest retailer, and the who you are is intrinsically a retailer, then your strategy will be to stack retail brands on top of each other to speak to different addressable market. If, however, your growth plan is your aspiration is for growth, and we want to be big and diverse, then being a retailer is not what you are then. Retail is just one part. You want to then, if your diversity will come from acquiring and or growing in your supply chain and supporting and developing your supply. So now you have a stack and spread strategy. So the who you are is not a retailer. Who you are now is a distributor. And that's a very different way of thinking about growth and strategy. So it becomes this loop that links to who you are. And who you are can change and often you get these heroic people saying, "Oh, it's all about the who we are and our values and all that sort of stuff," and they don't change. It's like they might not change, but they evolve. Yeah, and they get better, and you become more mature, and you get smarter. And I guarantee I'll be smarter tomorrow than I was today. Yeah, and I guarantee that I can't be smarter. I can't impose how smart I am to how I was yesterday. And so this idea that you don't change who you are, it's just nonsense. It doesn't work that way. No. It's the same for your business. Yeah. So that when you talk about growth, and you're that CEO,
define all the
who you are as a business when you're growing from 20 people to 100. I promise is different than who you are when you're growing from 100 to 1,000. People. When you go from South Australia to national. Changes who you are. You're South Australian, or are you national? Yeah. And because you get this jingoistic way of actually still being South Australian, your mouth is saying you're national, but you're still behaving like a South Australian.
Do you create the strategy to do it from 20 to 100 first, and then, or do you create the strategy from 20 to 1,000? Because you said you're different, right?
It's not. I think it's iterative all the time.
All the time. So it's just this constant game. Yeah.
Constantly iterative, and so it goes to this idea of like when you were saying before, like I'm never satisfied with it. It's like, well, another version of that is rather than saying you're never satisfied with it, it's like it's iterative. Once I get there, then once I get to that jumping off platform, my field of vision will be different. I don't know what that field of vision is going to be. So let's just get there, and then let's evaluate what that looks like. So there's only two things that are certain. Things will go wrong, and you'll argue with people about it. They're the only two guarantees that will
taxes,
happen.
Isn't
it? Yeah. So the things to be good at is if the only two things are things will go wrong, and you'll fight about it. The two skills you want to be really good at is conflict resolution and redesign. And if you're good at conflict resolution and redesign, all you got to do is you don't have to get everybody all the way. You only have to get them to the next platform.
One step at a time. That's right.
Yeah.
Now let's flip that scenario, and we've got your appointed CEO in prep to sell a company, right? So we're a 1,000 people strong company. I want to bring in this digital transformation that's going to automate it. I'm going to reduce my staffing by 50%. Go down to 500 odd people, and then we're going to make it look magnificent and great, and then we're going to sell it. Because you're seeing a lot of that happening in the market right now. So what was your thought process as a CEO walking into that role?
So there's a bit in that in terms of if selling the business is the goal, then who's buying it. So because the who's buying it is really important, because that's who you're designing it for now.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So and understanding who's buying it and why gets lost sometimes in this. So let's say the board has said we're selling.
Yep.
They become obsessed with selling the business and getting it ready for sale, right? Why? Well, because we want to exit. Cool. So tell me who in the marketplace is interested in giving money to you so you can exit and they're left behind. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're actually got to build it for somebody who's going to buy it. And in terms of doing that, you've got to build value into the business that is valuable for them, because you've decided what your value looks like out of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be incompatible with the value that they're seeing in it. So just understand, again, this is like the reverse of growth, right?
Yeah.
What's your growth language? Now what's your exchange language? Because you're exchanging your business with somebody else. What's the exchange language looking like? So you design your business and your strategy for the exchange of value. That exchange is going to be different.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, I'd like to understand what the exit strategy actually looks like. What does the sale process actually look like? Who that's going to be? If they need to see a track record of fat profit for a while, fine. You can recalibrate the business. You look at what is the core competence of the business and what are the ancillary pieces of the business. You can work out what makes the profit of the business, and you get rid of all the ancillary stuff. Now, will you have harmed the capacity of the business to diversify and or grow or do different things later? Yeah. But you've got a fat profit and you're exiting, so that's what you're designing.
Well, I'm hearing in both answers is clarity, right? It's just create clarity about what the end game is.
Always.
It's always your starting point. What is the
always
end game?
Be clear, but also be clear. Clarity is not certainty.
Yeah,
there's a big difference between it's always being clear is always communicating and always communicating what you're saying and adjusting and adjusting and adjusting, right? It's not certainty. The only certainty is things will go wrong and we will fight about it.
I love it. And you'll pay tax along the way.
Yeah.
I am really looking at the clock here. I was going to ask a heap about Vinomofo, but I'm really interested in your role now as CEO of Vinomofo. By the way, I love the story of Vinomofo. I put a $300 order in last night.
Well done.
My favourite bit is the Tom Hanks picture that comes up after you order it. Tom Hanks is one of my favourite actors, and every time that comes, I think that's why I buy it, because I was going to see his picture saying thanks to me, T. Hanks. I know the story. You were, Andre and Justin quite well, and you have through their career, and now you're the CEO. What is the growth aspirations for Vinomofo? How do you plan on taking on this world? And I know the e-commerce world's facing some rough time at the moment, but you guys seem to be doing, pretty well amongst it all. So can you tell us about where you guys are at and what the future looks like?
So Andre and Justin, and I knew the guys before they were at Vinomofo and when they were doing Road to Vino and before that. So, but they're amazing vision back then, and you've got to cast your mind back 11 years ago.
Yeah,
they knew a fair bit about wine and they loved wine, but they didn't. If you think about the wine world back then, they didn't kind of look like wine people, because wine snobs, and
that's why they're the digital wine guys, aren't they?
Their first thing was like, there's a whole bunch of people that would like to get involved in wine and like wine, but are intimidated by people speaking about the posh. And it's intimidating. They wanted to create an environment where you could say, I bought that wine because I like it. Why do you like it? Can I just like it?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
It's just a good taste, yeah.
Yep. So
it makes me feel good.
Or, the label impressed my mates.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that gets caught up in wine wankery, right? Yeah. So they wanted to blow that up. So they this mantra of no bow ties, which stood for the no imperious snotty and no BS.
Yeah.
Call it out and do that. So getting rid of wine wankery. And now
and the name itself, right? Wine.
Exactly right. It's a reverent. But always our focus is on good wine.
Yeah.
So it's good wine always. So we don't sell stuff that you won't like. Yeah. And we put a lot of energy into making sure that we buy really well and wine that you're going to like.
Yeah. Oh, my favourite's the black market special, because I don't know how to pick wine. But so the black market one's kind of like, well, I'll let you guys do it, and it'll be a surprise when it rocks up on my door.
And lots of our competitors do this secret secret product, right?
Yeah.
And where they fail, because we put so much energy into getting black market right, and where the others fail is they put, like, it's genuinely a surprise.
Are you about to give away your secrets, right?
No.
Okay, good.
Because the secret is really simple.
Yeah.
Make sure that the wine that's in the secret deal is the best wine you've got.
Yeah.
So when somebody opens the packet and they go, holy smokes.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
How did they get that for that price? It's not sort of like, oh yeah, or
Yeah.
it's not unknown.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be good. You've got to get it right.
I'm interested
every time.
because I know a very good friend of mine, and our kids go to school together. Is a CEO of a company, a wine company, and I don't want to drop names in there, but it's his wine or the company's wine arrives on my doorstep. I'm like, how can I buy this for half the price than what I can get it from you from? He's like, I don't know how they do it either. So,
I'm not going to tell you that bit.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, the CEO can't even get it for me the price that you guys can. I think it's wonderful. That's why I buy everything through you.
So yeah, we buy well. We put a lot of energy into doing that and staying true to what our customers are looking for, which is really good wine at a good price.
It's brilliant.
And so the guys, again, 10 years later, there's heaps of people doing that. And in fact, the language used around the wine world now is different as well. So that's all changed. And so we've got this really great disruption story where there was a market ready for disruption. It was new to e-commerce. It was new. It was inviting to new people to come in. But now there's lots of access.
Yeah.
So the challenge for us now is, like, who are we and what's our plan to grow going forward?
Yeah.
One of the things as a business, and e-com is seeing this around the place at the moment, is COVID got everybody online and got used to people buying online. All that. So they're also pretty expert at buying online. What a lot of e-commerce companies didn't really use the opportunity for is to go, how do we use this rush and this bounty? What are we going to learn from it? Because it's going to go away.
Yeah.
And
eventually,
people... It was amazing when, at the start of it, it was the language, particularly around bankers and investors, is like this is going to last forever. And it's kind of like, when you see a professional sports person who, as a professional athlete, has been a super athlete when they were young, and then they get paid a lot.
And then all of a sudden
then it's gone, and now they can't get a job for even a tenth of what they were getting paid.
Yeah. But you see that as also like the bricks and mortar are dead, right? That was the language that was coming out at that time, correct?
Bricks and mortar is definitely not dead.
Yeah.
Because bricks and mortar is where people interact.
It's exactly.
So
people go for an outing, don't they?
Yeah, that human connection. 2 years down into COVID sort of restrictions, that's what people really craving now was that real connection.
Yeah.
But they kind of like the online version too. There's this notion that everything's going to reset back to where it was. It's never going to go back there, but it's not going to stay here either.
No.
So we started a reform process in 2019. Then COVID happened. We kept that reform process going throughout the pandemic. Obviously, the numbers went all up, but we were using that time to get ready to sustain that on the other side. And part of that was making sure that our business model was focused on what, in really simple terms, is making sure we have a buoyant boat.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds really simple, right?
Yeah.
But if on the other side of the pandemic there's going to be a downturn in market conditions, I don't know, like now, and you weren't investing in making sure you've got a buoyant boat, in fact, you've got a leak in your boat, because you're saying, we're not going to make profit. We're going to lose money but keep growing. Now you're going to just lose money because you're not going to keep growing because you're churning all of those customers now, and you're having to, with the death of the cookie and paid channels getting more expensive, everything is now conspiring against that strategy. So if you still have that strategy now, you got a hole in the boat.
Yeah.
And now, where the investors going to come along? Where's your high growth frothy story? And the investors are going to pay. It's gone.
It's gone.
So we focused on making sure that we still deliver really good product for our customers, and that our business is buoyant, and whether our competitors can adjust fast enough to continue to offer that kind of value will be up to them. But we're in a position now where we can continue on the other side, and we're still growing. We're talking to some guys in the States, and they're saying if their e-com company can do COVID numbers less 5% at the moment, they will have had a really good year. We're not going to be 10 or 15%, but we're still growing the business post-COVID by again, though, doing the basics really well.
And it's a fun and innovative experience. Like you feel that as like my client experience with Vinomofo is that these guys or this business or an organisation I want to buy from them because it, like for me, it attracts that type of language that you use, and the experience that you get when you're clicking on the site is something that sings out to me.
You can see that everybody who works there loves this stuff.
Yeah.
Like we've got a bar in the middle of the office.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
and we taste all of the wine. We don't just if you're a winemaker, we're not just a marketplace where we're dumping your wine. And for as a customer, there's not some wine that no one's tasted. Like we love this. We've tasted 100 of them, and only 5 of them got through to the site, and they're the ones that we love.
Isn't that amazing?
And it comes through in the language.
Not only are you looking for clients, like this is the beauty of what you guys have created. Not only are you looking for customers to buy, but you're actually looking like wineries are saying, "Can we sell through you, or can we come to you?" You're turning people away because you want that quality.
Most of it away.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Most of it away.
Kudos to you guys and the team out there.
Oh, thank you. We love it.
I am conscious you have to shoot off in a minute to catch up with a man that I absolutely love, Mr. Andrew Nunn. Are you? I'm going to jump into some quick fire questions. I had a whole bunch of questions that we didn't get to. Maybe we can do a round 2 one day. But let's jump into the quick fire questions to round off the podcast. What are you reading right now?
I've just finished reading Pyramid of Lies, which is the story of Green Seal.
Yeah, wow.
I could not put that down.
So Pyramid of Lies.
It's called Pyramid of Lies.
Brilliant. Okay.
Lex Greensill won the EY Entrepreneur of the Year in 2019, and that was the year that I was in the finals as well. And I can remember going, man, this guy's so brilliant because I don't understand a thing that he's talking about. It turns out that lots of other people didn't understand that either. But I couldn't put that down. And so since I finished that last week, and I just started Peter Fitzsimon's Eureka.
Okay.
Which is obviously the history of Peter Lawler and the Eureka Stockade.
Brilliant. What is one book, and let's talk about it from a leadership point of view. What is one book that stood out for you?
This is going to sound so not academic, but it's is Who Moved My Cheese.
I knew you were going to say that for some reason. I don't know, when the moment Boss Spencer Johnson, it's a ripper.
It is a ripper.
It's one of my, I love it. Yep. It is, because it just explains
everything that's going wrong will comes down to you mismanaging that.
I got my daughter to read it to me, right? Like it's such an easy read. And my 10-year-old daughter, I'm like, you got to read this book. And she had no idea what it was about. But then now she's understanding it. It's back to basics, isn't it? Really
super. It's because it's people that'll mess up your great plans.
100%. I love it. What's one lesson that's taken you the longest to learn?
A lesson that's been that I'm good enough.
Yeah.
That internal narrative, like to actually believe that I'm good at this and I'm allowed to say that. I don't have to constantly be dissatisfied. I'm not sure that I've 100% learned that, but I'm coming to the. But yeah, that's taken a long time because it's really it pushes you really well sometimes, and it doesn't push you well other times.
Do you think when you say I'm good enough, I have a binary vision point on that, because I think if I say I'm good enough, then I stop trying to grow.
Yeah, no, I think of good enough. Am I good enough today?
Okay.
I'll be better tomorrow.
Yeah.
But am I
I'm
good enough
enough
today?
today.
And there are days when, as a CEO, you haven't done a good job.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can string a few days together where you haven't done a good job.
It's a week
and people see it, and you
Yeah.
think that they don't, and you think you've got to hide it, all that sort of stuff. I've sort of got old and experienced enough to go, guys, I reckon last week wasn't my best week, but next week's going to be a better one. So thanks for backing me up on that one. And you can, for people to go, oh, okay, so you could see it too.
Yeah.
And you're not kidding yourself.
Yeah.
They're more likely to keep
Well, it
following
just shows
you.
the maturity as well, and the vulnerability piece is what people are after.
Yeah.
If you're, we don't need to go down that.
Good enough today.
Yeah, that's exactly. Brilliant. Good enough today. 3 people, if you could invite 3 people for dinner, who would they be?
My late father, I would. He used to he would sit at the table and he would be the last one to speak. He wouldn't have spoken all night, and he would listen to everybody. And then somebody at the end of the night would say, well, what do you think? And it would be mind-blowing what his observations of the whole conversation.
I love people like that. I try to be that person. I just can't.
I try to, but he was amazing at that. I would have Andrew Nunn because
absolutely ripping.
He's so smart. He's such a good human.
Yeah.
He's so energetic. And it'd be really interesting to ask my dad what he thought of that at the end.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't. Andrew's been on this podcast, and he can talk, so your dad would have a lot to listen to.
Yeah,
and like everything that comes out of Andrew's mouth is gold. Yeah. Trust me, it's probably one of our most downloaded podcasts, and the amount of feedback that we got back from him was great. But that'd be. He's joined my invite list too, I reckon, of late.
Yeah, I think he'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And I think someone like, politically I didn't necessarily agree with lots of things that she did, but I would be super interested to have Julia Gillard there in that, because
Do you know her?
Nope.
No.
But she was a person who at a point in time in our history was just whether she was at the inflection point or she was the inflection point, but she's so important in our Australian history. Whether or not you politically agree with her is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I think she's an important person in our Australian history, and I would just love to understand more of what her experience was.
Yeah. I'm trying so hard to get her on this podcast.
She would be awesome.
Yeah. She's amazing. If you had access to a time machine with one trip, like it's a one-way trip, so you're up and back and that's it, where would you go?
I think I'd go back to the 70s, some point in time in the mid-70s.
Is that when you had hair or no?
Oh yeah, I definitely had hair then. Because I think there was a lot. It was when Microsoft was emerging, when Apple was emerging.
Yeah.
Everything was pre-digital in a real sense, but just about on the cusp of that.
So go back, set up a couple of stocks.
Oh yeah. Totally would invest in Microsoft and Apple, right?
Absolutely.
And pull that out of HP and put it in. Yeah, but
brilliant.
Yeah,
I love it. I forgot to ask you a question. What's some of the best advice that you've ever received?
Just decide.
Yeah. Just be a CEO.
Just be a good CEO. Yeah. Just decide.
I love it.
But the other one was my Scottish grandmother saying, "Don't ask poor people how to make money."
Yeah,
that's not about poor people. That's really about don't listen to people who don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Test it first.
And it goes to the whole surround yourself with people that, don't be the smartest person in the room. It's brilliant. I love that stuff. If you could, so your house was on fire, your family, your pets, they're all safe, and you would run back in to save one thing, what would that one thing be?
I have a book there that was given to my dad in 1949 when he was on a ship, and it's a leather-bound book called Treasury of the Familiar, and it's got an inscription in there and interleaved in the things and notes from my dad or exchange between my dad and I. But the book is all great verse, Rudyard Kipling and W.H. Owen, and all of the great sayings is in this old leather-bound book. It's the only possession that I would go and grab.
Yeah, so good. Oh, I'd love to read it. If you had one superhero power, what would it be?
I think it would. I don't know. There's one because it's sort of like a combination of them all. But I guess it would be, for me, it'd be being impervious to damage.
Like a Wolverine.
Yeah.
So ability to re-heal.
Being constantly resilient. Yeah, the ability to constantly re-heal.
That's so good. That's different. We've never had that before. Everyone says fly and, boring old stuff. But
Well, I think at the beginning of the podcast, I said, if you decide to be the CEO, you've made a decision that you can soak up more punishment than most people around you.
That's true.
So I would imagine the most powerful superpower is regeneration, right? How to take the pain and recover.
Brilliant. Now, I flicked you this before. Bring a dad joke.
I've got my favourite dad joke. My kids
you
hate it.
You can't be CEO of Vinomofo and not have a dad joke.
So how much does it cost for a pirate to get his ears pierced?
How much?
$1 a year.
So $2. Brilliant. Well done. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a great privilege.
Yeah, and look, thank you for your knowledge and your wisdom and your experiences, and sharing everything that you've learned. Well, not everything, sharing a lot that you've learned along your journey today. I know I'm going to I can't wait to re-listen to this back and take some of those lessons away. And for all the people that you help, I know that you've said to me previously, you love helping CEOs and young up-and-comers and people who are struggling in these roles. And it seems like you're doing some amazing things out there, not only with Vinomofo, but with other up-and-coming businesses. So thank you for everything that you're bringing to this world.
I think if you're not doing that, you're not reflecting on your own performance. If you don't understand what makes you perform, then you can't repeat it. So mentoring and supporting other people is as much about you understanding what works as it is sharing with them. So it's if anybody who's not doing that, lots of reasons to look skeptically sometimes. Yeah. So thank you very much for having me. It's
brilliant. I'll be picking your brain on some things to come. No problems at all. But thanks for your time. Where can we find you if people want to get in contact with you, follow you?
You can easily find me on LinkedIn. Look me up on my name, or shoot me an email at paul.edginton@vinomofo.com. Yeah, great. And I'm always happy to answer questions.
And you're pretty prolific on Twitter too. I see you've got a few followers there.
I read it. I don't know if I tweet too much that's profound, but by the time I do, I put up and then delete a lot. I do.
Retweet? No, I shouldn't read it.
I'm not going to say that.
Brilliant. Loved having you on. Thanks again, and wish you all the best. And thank you everyone. Take care. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. You can check out the show notes if there was anything of interest to you, and find out more about us at synergyiq.com.au. I am going to ask though, if you did like the podcast, it would absolutely mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate and review. And if you didn't like it, that's all right too. There's no need to do anything. Take care guys. All the best.